Disclaimer: this story is a work of fiction inspired by real-life experiences. Names, characters, and incidents are either products of the author's imagination or used fictitiously. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or real events is purely coincidental. The story deals with sensitive issues such as infidelity and emotional distress. Reader discretion is advised. It was an ordinary evening, and I was sitting quietly in my living room, sipping tea and flipping through the newspaper. Life had been calm and predictable lately, with no major surprises or upheavals. Suddenly, the sound of the front door opening caught me off guard. To my astonishment, standing there was my son, unexpected, unannounced, and looking far from his usual cheerful self. He didn't say anything at first. Instead, he just stood there, his eyes searching mine, carrying a heaviness I hadn't seen before. My heart skipped a beat, sensing that something serious was troubling him. "Come in, son," I said gently, stepping aside to let him in. Once inside, he sank into the couch, running his hands nervously through his hair. I watched him quietly for a moment, trying to read his face. He looked tired, worn down by something he wasn't ready to share yet. "Is everything okay?" I asked cautiously. He hesitated, then sighed deeply. "Dad, I don't really know how to say this," he finally murmured. "I'm going through something, and I need your help." My mind raced. What could it be? Problems at work? Health issues? Or something else? I reached out and placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You can tell me anything. I'm here for you." He looked up, eyes glistening with unshed tears. "It's about my marriage," he confessed. "Things haven't been right for a while. I've been trying to ignore it, hoping it would go away, but I can't anymore." My heart ached hearing those words. I knew marriage wasn't always easy, but this was the first time he was admitting something was seriously wrong. "Tell me what's going on," I encouraged softly, ready to listen without judgment. He took a shaky breath and began. "I don't know how to explain it, but I feel like I'm losing her. There are things she's not telling me, and I don't know who she really is anymore." His voice cracked with emotion. We sat in silence for a moment. The quiet in the room felt heavy with unspoken fears and confusion. I wanted to comfort him, but I knew he needed to speak his truth first. "I came here because I don't know where else to turn," he said quietly. "You're the only one I can trust to help me figure this out." I nodded, squeezing his shoulder gently. "We'll get through this together. Whatever it is, you're not alone." That night marked the beginning of a difficult journey, one that would test our family bonds, challenge our trust, and reveal truths I never expected to face. But for now, I held my son close and promised to stand by him no matter what. The next morning, the weight of the previous night's conversation lingered in the air. I could tell my son was still wrestling with his thoughts, but there was a faint glimmer of relief in his eyes, perhaps because he had finally taken the first step in sharing his burden. Over a simple breakfast, I gently encouraged him to tell me more about what had been troubling him. He hesitated, staring down at his coffee cup, fingers nervously tapping its edge. "It's complicated, Dad," he started, voice barely above a whisper. "I love her. I really do. But lately, something's changed. It's like she's a stranger in the same house." I nodded, urging him to continue without pressure. "What kind of changes? How do you mean?" He sighed deeply. "She's distant. When I try to talk, she shuts down or makes excuses. Sometimes, she's out late without telling me where she's going. And then there are the little things, her phone always locked, sudden texts that she hides when I come near. It's the silence that hurts the most. It's like there's a wall between us." His voice cracked, and I could see the pain beneath the surface. "I've been trying to convince myself that it's just stress or something temporary, but my gut tells me something else is going on." I reached out and took his hand. "It's good you're paying attention to how you feel. Trust your instincts, they rarely lie." He nodded but looked away, struggling with his next words. "I don't want to jump to conclusions, but sometimes I catch her in lies. Little things that don't add up. I've thought maybe she's hiding something, maybe even someone. The idea hit me like a punch to the gut. Infidelity. The very word felt heavy and painful. I knew how devastating it could be, especially coming from someone you trusted deeply. I'm scared, Dad, he admitted. I don't want to lose her. But I also don't want to live in this shadow of doubt. My heart broke for him. I remembered my own struggles, the moments when trust is tested and hearts feel torn. It's okay to be scared. But you're brave for facing it. The first step is knowing the truth. He took a deep breath, steadying himself. I just don't know how to handle it. If she is seeing someone else, what do I do? How do I protect myself without destroying what we have? That was the crucial question. I told him that the answers wouldn't come easily, but honesty, both with himself and with her, would be the foundation for any next step. We agreed that he needed clarity, but also caution. For now, I said, keep your eyes and heart open, but don't act on fear. Sometimes, what feels like betrayal can have other explanations. You owe it to yourself and to her to understand fully. He seemed to find some comfort in that, but the shadow in his eyes remained. I could tell the battle inside him was far from over. Thank you for listening, Dad. I don't know what I'd do without you. I smiled, though my heart was heavy. You'll never have to find out. We're in this together. The day wore on, but the tension remained. I knew this was just the beginning. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with questions and fears we both hoped to answer in time. Days passed since our last conversation, but the tension in my son's eyes never fully lifted. He kept checking his phone, pacing nervously whenever a message or call came through. I could see that the burden he carried was growing heavier by the hour. Finally, one evening, he sat down beside me with a mixture of hesitation and determination that told me he was ready to reveal what he had been holding back. Dad, he began quietly, I think I have to tell you something I never imagined I'd say. His voice trembled slightly, and I braced myself for the blow. I found something, he continued, swallowing hard. Something I wish I hadn't. His hands were clenched tightly, knuckles white. I saw messages, texts and photos, between my wife and another man. It's clear she's been unfaithful. A cold wave washed over me. Hearing those words was like watching the foundation of my son's world crack beneath him. I wanted to comfort him, but I also needed to give him space to process. I'm so sorry you had to find out this way, I said gently. He looked down, fighting back tears. I don't even know how to feel. Angry, betrayed, lost, all at once. I keep asking myself how long this has been going on and if I missed the signs. I reached out and put my arm around him, pulling him close. Infidelity often comes with hidden pain, for both partners. The signs are there, but sometimes we're blinded by hope or denial. He nodded slowly. She's been coming home late, making excuses, lying about where she's been. I always thought I was imagining things. But now, the truth is undeniable. The room was heavy with silence. I could see the storm of emotions battling inside him, hurt, confusion, and disbelief. What do you want to do now? I asked softly. He took a deep breath. I don't want to make any rash decisions. I want to understand why she did this and if there's any chance to fix what's broken. But I also don't want to be a fool. Those are wise thoughts, I said. You need to be careful, but also honest with yourself. It's okay to feel angry, but don't let it consume you. He looked up, eyes searching mine. I'm scared, Dad. Scared that this might destroy my marriage and my family. I know, I said. But no matter what happens, you're not alone. We'll face this together. We talked late into the night, discussing what had led to this moment and what steps he might take next. I could see his strength growing, even in the face of heartbreak. The road ahead was uncertain, but I promised him that we would find a way through. That night, as I watched my son wrestle with a pain I wished he never had to endure, I realized this was more than just a family crisis. it was a profound test of trust, love, and resilience. After the shock of the revelation, my son felt both relieved and terrified. He finally had the confirmation he dreaded, yet now faced the daunting question, what next? How does one confront a betrayal without losing everything in the process? Over the next few days, he became consumed with the need for clarity, not just suspicion, but undeniable proof. He needed to be sure before making any irreversible decisions. One afternoon, as we sat in the quiet of the living room, he confided in me his fears. "Dad, I don't want to accuse her without solid evidence. But how do I get that without ruining everything?" His voice was heavy with anxiety and frustration. I understood his dilemma. Acting hastily could destroy his marriage and family even if his fears turned out to be misplaced. But ignoring the signs wasn't an option either. "We need to be cautious," I told him. "Gathering proof isn't just about catching her in the act, it's about protecting your dignity and making sure you have the full picture." He nodded, eager to hear what I thought he should do next. I suggested some practical steps, paying attention to inconsistencies in her stories, noting patterns of behavior, and, if possible, discreetly observing without arousing suspicion. Most importantly, I urged him to stay calm and avoid confrontations until he felt confident about what he knew. He agreed, but I could see the toll this was taking on him. Every day, his mind was a whirlwind of suspicion and hope. "I feel like I'm walking on a tightrope," he admitted one evening. One wrong move, and everything could collapse. That night, I encouraged him to document everything: dates, times, odd behaviors, phone habits. Sometimes, just having a record can bring clarity. "But remember," I said firmly, "don't let anger or desperation drive your actions. Think carefully about each step." We also discussed reaching out for outside help, whether a counselor, a trusted friend, or a private investigator if things got too complicated. He was hesitant but understood the value of professional guidance. Over the next few days, my son became more vigilant. He watched quietly from a distance, noted phone calls that were quickly ended, and observed late-night texts she tried to hide. His heart sank with every suspicious detail, but at the same time, he felt a strange sense of empowerment. He was no longer in the dark. One evening, he showed me a collection of messages he had saved, some clearly flirtatious, others more intimate. "I don't want to believe it," he whispered. "But there's no denying it anymore." I placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You're stronger than you think. Now that you have proof, you can decide how to face this truth." As the days passed, I saw a new resolve in him. The uncertainty that once paralyzed him was slowly being replaced by clarity. But with that clarity came the hard questions. What would happen when he confronted his wife? Could their marriage survive this? And most importantly, how would they both heal from the wounds of betrayal? We didn't have answers yet, but I promised him I'd be there every step of the way. The days of quiet observation finally culminated in a moment my son had feared but also needed: the undeniable discovery of the truth. One evening, as I sat reading in the study, my son's urgent knock startled me. His face was pale, eyes wide with a mixture of pain and anger. "Dad, I found it," he said, voice trembling. "I have proof I can't ignore." I put down my book and motioned for him to sit. He pulled out his phone, scrolling through messages, photos, and call logs that confirmed what we had feared. There was no longer any room for doubt. His wife's infidelity wasn't a vague suspicion, it was a painful reality. The room felt heavy with sorrow. I watched as the weight of betrayal settled over him, his shoulders sagging under the emotional burden. "I don't even know how to feel," he whispered. "It's like my whole world has shattered." I reached out, holding his hand firmly. "It's okay to feel broken. Betrayal cuts deep, especially from someone you trusted most." He looked at me, eyes wet with tears. I keep replaying everything, wondering if I missed the signs or if there was something I could have done differently. "Don't blame yourself," I said firmly. "Infidelity is a choice your wife made, not a failure on your part." As the evening deepened, we talked at length about what this meant, not just for his marriage but for his own sense of self. The shock had begun to give way to a storm of emotions: anger, sadness, confusion, and a profound sense of loss. My mind is a mess, he admitted. I don't know if I can trust her anymore, or if I even want to. Trust once broken is hard to rebuild, I acknowledged. But this is your life, your marriage. The path forward is yours to choose. I encouraged him to take time before making any decisions, whether to confront his wife, seek counseling, or consider separation. You owe it to yourself to heal, no matter what happens next. He nodded, grateful for the support. Thank you for being here, Dad. I don't think I could handle this alone. Never, I promised. We'll get through this, step by step. That night, as my son tried to come to terms with the discovery, I realized how fragile yet resilient the human heart can be. Betrayal wounds deeply, but with love and support, healing can begin. The days after the painful discovery were some of the hardest my son had ever faced. The initial shock had settled into a heavy reality that he couldn't ignore any longer. We spent many long hours talking about feelings, fears, and what the future might hold. It was clear to both of us that his life was at a crossroads. Dad, he said one afternoon, eyes distant, I keep asking myself what this means for my marriage. Can something like this ever be repaired? Or am I just fooling myself hoping for a second chance? I looked at him thoughtfully. It's never an easy path, son. Infidelity changes everything. It shakes the foundation of trust that marriage is built on. But whether to rebuild or walk away is a deeply personal decision. He nodded, his expression conflicted. I want to believe we can work through this. I want to save my family. But the pain, it's overwhelming. I don't know if I can forgive her, or even if I want to. I reminded him that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or excusing what happened. It's a process, sometimes a long one, and only possible if both parties are willing to be honest and committed to healing. He sighed. She hasn't said much since I confronted her. She's sorry, but there are no easy answers. I feel like I'm living in a fog. We talked about the importance of communication, how he needed to express his feelings openly and also listen to hers, however painful that might be. I suggested seeking counseling, both individual and couples therapy, as a way to navigate the complex emotions. But what if it's too late? He asked quietly. What if the damage can't be undone? I didn't have a perfect answer, but I told him that no matter what, he needed to prioritize his own emotional well-being. Sometimes healing means learning to let go, other times it means fighting to rebuild. He admitted feeling lost, unsure of his own strength. I don't want to lose the life we built, Dad. But I don't want to be trapped in a marriage built on lies. We agreed that taking things one day at a time was crucial. Rushing decisions in moments of pain could lead to regret. He needed clarity and patience, not just for his wife's sake, but for his own. As the evening sun cast long shadows across the room, I saw in my son's eyes a flicker of resolve amid the sadness. Thank you for helping me see through the darkness, he said softly. I smiled gently. You're stronger than you know. Whatever happens, you won't face it alone. The road ahead was uncertain, but I promised to stand by him as he faced this painful reality, ready to support him in healing or moving forward, whatever the future held. After days of emotional turmoil and soul-searching, my son finally gathered the courage to confront his wife directly. He knew that avoiding the issue would only prolong the pain, and that clarity, no matter how painful, was necessary for both of them. I was there with him, offering support and guidance as he prepared himself for what would be one of the most difficult conversations of his life. That evening, when his wife came home, the atmosphere was heavy with unspoken tension. My son took a deep breath and asked her to sit down with him. His voice was steady but carried the weight of his hurt. We need to talk, he said quietly. She looked surprised but nodded, sensing the seriousness in his tone. As he began to lay out what he had discovered, the messages, the lies, the betrayal, the room seemed to shrink around them. His wife's eyes welled with tears, and for a moment, the raw vulnerability between them was palpable. I'm sorry, she whispered, her voice breaking. I never meant to hurt you. It just happened, and I didn't know how to tell you. The conversation was painful and honest. She confessed to the affair, explaining the loneliness and dissatisfaction she had felt but also her confusion and guilt. My son listened, torn between anger and compassion. The woman he loved had betrayed him, but there was still a part of him that longed to understand and maybe forgive. He asked questions, about why, when, and how long, trying to piece together the reality that had shattered his trust. Tears were shed on both sides, and the air was thick with regret and sorrow. But amidst the heartbreak, something remarkable happened. They began to talk about what they both wanted going forward. She expressed a desire to repair their marriage, to rebuild the trust she had broken. My son, though shaken, admitted he was willing to try, if only because he still loved her and wanted to save their family. I watched from a distance, proud of the courage and maturity they both showed. Healing wouldn't be easy or quick, but this confrontation was the crucial first step. After the conversation ended, my son came to me, exhausted but strangely relieved. "It was the hardest thing I've ever done," he said, "but I'm glad I faced it. Now, at least, we're honest with each other." I nodded, knowing that honesty was the foundation they needed to rebuild on. "Healing takes time," I reminded him, "but you've shown incredible strength already." That night, as I reflected on everything, I realized how fragile and complex human relationships can be. Betrayal wounds deeply, but so can love, forgiveness, and the willingness to fight for what truly matters. The days and weeks following the confrontation were a whirlwind of emotions, therapy sessions, and difficult conversations. My son and his wife both knew the road to healing would be long and filled with challenges, but they were committed to trying. With each step, they confronted the raw truths of their relationship and worked to rebuild the trust that had been shattered. Counseling became a vital part of their journey. Through guided therapy sessions, they learned to communicate openly and honestly, expressing the hurt, anger, and fears that had been buried deep. It was painful, sometimes unbearably so, but necessary. I saw my son slowly regain his confidence and strength, and even witnessed moments where his wife showed genuine remorse and a desire to make amends. I reminded him often that healing isn't linear. Some days would feel like progress, while others might bring setbacks. "Be patient with yourself," I told him. "Forgiveness is a process, not a moment." They also worked on setting new boundaries and rebuilding their emotional connection. Small gestures, listening without judgment, spending time together, and being transparent, began to mend the fractures between them. My son learned to express his needs and fears without resentment, and his wife made efforts to be more present and honest. Despite the pain, there were signs of hope. Their marriage wasn't perfect, but it was becoming something new, something honest. The betrayal had forever changed them, but it hadn't destroyed their will to fight for their family. One evening, as we sat together, my son reflected on everything he had been through. "Dad, I never thought I'd survive this," he said softly. "But I'm learning that pain doesn't have to be the end. It can be the beginning of something stronger." I smiled, proud of the resilience and growth I saw in him. "You've shown incredible courage. Whatever happens next, you're not defined by the hurt, you're defined by how you rise from it." Their journey toward healing continued, imperfect but hopeful. They knew the scars would always remain, reminders of the past, but also proof of their strength and willingness to rebuild. In the end, my son's visit for help became more than just about infidelity. It became a story of survival, forgiveness, and the power of family. And through it all, I stood by him, proud to be part of his journey toward healing and moving forward.